Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us with the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association's webinar, Native America Speaks, Building Cultural Tourism Through Storytelling, Tours, and Performance. Today's webinar is made possible with a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, NEA, and this is part of a new initiative to engage artists and Native nations to help build Native arts programs in their communities and promote artists and art events through our website, nativeamerica.travel. My name is Melanie Laborwit, and I am IANTA's Native Art and Culture Coordinator. I have worked for many years with museums and developing public sector programs celebrating regional traditional heritage and culture, and I will be working to grow partnerships with Native nations, artists, regional museums, galleries, and cultural centers to raise visibility and access for cultural tribal resources. It is an exciting time to join IANTA as we all work to empower Native American artists and develop their markets and elevate awareness of the role that Native arts play in cultural tourism as well as heritage preservation. In today's webinar, attendees will learn more about how collaborative efforts with regional parks or other cultural venues can elevate Native American traditional artists and traditional cultural performance and help build regional attractions with a Native perspective. Native America Speaks, Building Cultural Tourism Through Storytelling, Tours, and Performance. We're going to be welcoming a couple of special guests. Keepers of tradition, Darnell and Robert Smokey Rides at the Door, are cultural workers who have collaborated with the National Park Service in a Native America Speaks interpretive program for several decades. They have been a part of numerous programs as well, including the Ironshield Creative Indigenous Storytelling Workshops, hikes, presentations, and other collaborations now with the Montana State Park System. At Glacier National Park, the Native America Speaks evening programs and cultural presentations provide opportunities for local tribal members to share their rich history and culture through singing, storytelling, and hands-on learning. In addition to programs offered in the park, Native America Speaks presentations are also offered on the Blackfeet Nation at several locations, including the Museum of the Plains Indian, the Heritage Center, and the Chewing Black Bones Campground. The program began in 1982 and is the longest running Indigenous speaker series in the National Park Service. Join us in learning more about how these collaborative efforts have evolved into successful interpretive programs, giving opportunities for dance groups, speakers, and others to share their traditions and culture. We're going to hear how it's benefited Blackfeet, Salish, Kootenai, and Pend Oreille tribal members at regional communities near Browning, Montana, and in the surrounding area. For those of you who are not familiar with IANTA, for nearly 2 decades, IANTA has served as the national voice for American Indians, nations, and Native Hawaiians engaged in cultural tourism. In addition to serving as the voice for Indian country tourism, IANTA provides technical assistance and training to tribal nations and Native-owned enterprises engaged in cultural tourism, hospitality, and recreation. IANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. Just want to make a last note before we get started to save the date for IANTA's 24th Annual American Indian Tourism Conference, October 24th to 27th this fall at Harrah's Resort, Southern California, hosted by the Rincon Tribe. This year's theme is Rising Together for the Journey Ahead. Registration is now open and sponsorship opportunities are still available. Visit our website at ianta.org to learn more about our education program offerings. At this time, I am pleased to introduce you to our presenters. Darnell rides at the door is a respected Picuni or Black, excuse me?
Picani.
Picani, thank you for the correction. I've only seen it in print. And apprentice to her elders who've gone before her, she's dedicated to continuing the legacy of traditional way of life and focusing on a greater understanding of the Picani worldview. Darnell is driven to balance the best of both worlds. As an Okan, did I pronounce that correctly? Good. Medicine Lodge, Thunder and Beaver medicine woman, and member of other Picani core groups, Darnell shares the history of her people. She's a consultant for Picani herbology and ethnobotany, education, culture, and traditions. And her partner, Roberts or Smokey, rides at the door. Amskapi Picani and traditional historian, Buffalo Backfat Band of the Amskapi Picani. Smokey is also known as Estacon or dependable, works for the people. And with the Buffalo Backfat Band of the Amskapi Picani or the Southern Pagan, did I pronounce that correctly? And Blackfeet. Pagan. He is a traditional historian and respected elder who shares the balance of oral traditions of the Picani worldview and ways of knowing as a teacher and mentor to all who are willing to listen, seek, and honor. He inherited and carries on storytelling skills of his warrior grandfathers. Smokey is also an accomplished educator, coach, administrator, business entrepreneur, civic and tribal leader, and traditional caretaker of ancient teachings and bundles of the Blackfeet. Smokey has served as a board member, as a tribal councilman, minerals chairman, where he has also influenced and developed better relationship in local, county, state, and international levels. He holds a degree in industrial arts with minors in history and business, and currently is listed as an ambassador of goodwill and finance to the Blackfeet Nation. We are so excited to have you both here and look forward to some of your stories and stories about telling those stories. And so I am going to, we're going to move forward to the next slide here. And if you might tell us a little bit about, we're going to see some beautiful places as we go forward. So Darnell and Smokey, thank you so much for being here. And the table is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Nalini. We appreciate the opportunity and also are very happy to be here with you today. Okay, nistu akan koknito kimi itutu Amskapi Picani. What I just said is hello, all my friends. My name is Nitu Kimi, which means lone camper in our language, and I am from the South Pagan Band of what you know as Blackfeet. We are one of 4 bands. The other 3 reside in Canada. But if following this cultural tourism, storytelling tours and performances, it takes us back years. It's been a dream of ours to be able to help our people become more recognized, but not only recognized, but tell our story from our perspectives. And this is our story today is sharing with you how we go about doing that from, I guess, from the inception to today, to now. So thank you very much.
So we're going to ask one question. Sometimes we are going to ask questions. I think this is the main one that we have. If there's anybody in this group who has ever done any cultural programs before working with parks, this is just a yes or no quick question. We want to get an idea of who all is out there and what we're looking for. We're almost done having all our people vote. And it's interesting. It looks like it's almost 50-50, that there's some people here who are joining us who have in fact participated with programs in parks. So that'll be really interesting to see where. So if you have, I think we're about done there. And it is, we have about 40% of you said yes, and 59% of you said no. For those of you who have done programs in the park, we're going to go to the next question. The real quick question is, if you could share in the chat what parks you may have collaborated with. That's really great. We're also, in addition to doing our new arts and culture initiative, we're doing some programs with the National Park Service and National Forest Service, and we'd love to hear about where there's those parks that are participating in similar programs. We're going to continue on, but if you'd put that in the chat, that would be great. Thank you. So we're going to continue on back to Montana. Okay, Darnell.
Back in Montana, do you want to describe this? I'll have Smokey describe this this photograph, and then we'll give you some more information as to who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Okay, everybody. Good to be part of the webinar today. The slide that you see in front of you is our annual event here on the Blackfeet Reservation in northern Montana. We have our annual Okan Ceremony Medicine Lodge, which is our very important ceremony that we have for a lot of tribal members that come together annually to be part of the ceremony. What we tried to do, and in the past, Darnell had mentioned briefly some of the ideas that we were approaching. Years ago, Montana was very slow in trying to incorporate the cultural studies of the various tribes, the 14 tribes in Montana. And so we pushed very hard to get legislation so that every school in Montana would not only be funded to sponsor cultural presentations, but to hear about the various tribes in the areas of all of the schools. And stemming from that, we created pretty much what we call a traveling medicine show, which we took various aspects of our culture and traditions, and we began to do presentations at various schools, especially in our area in northern Montana. And over the years, we have not only incorporated 20 to 30 schools annually, but we also incorporated the national parks, both Glacier National Park, Yellowstone National Park. We do programs similar to this with the Montana Fish and Game. We do the cultural training for various agencies, both at the state, tribal, and national level. And recently, we've been encouraged to do programs with private corporations, which is going to be pretty exciting because a lot of the corporations, especially dealing with energy, I really believe they need to have an introduction on the conservancy and also the cultural connection that we as Indian people have to the land and to those minerals that are also very important to all of America. And I think probably go to the next slide.
On this next slide, what you're witnessing is our connection to the cosmos and our connection to the universe. And this is the basis of who we are and where we come from. We say we come from the stars and we shall return to the stars, but this is actually a good capture of our Genesis. The Genesis covers the beginning of time for us. In our language, we say we are the Nitsitapi, or the real people. And that means that we came from someplace. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? And the stars tell our story. It also gives us what you had just seen that first slide, the Okan, and that is the central annual event in our life cycle, which gives us the ability to heal, to help our people, to continue that longevity, but it is to ensure survival. These two people are my mother and her mother, and this is where we come from. The next ones you'll see are, well, the one on the right is my grandmother. She was the first Miss Blackfeet. And before that, they called the Princess Dawn Mist, but her Indian name was Good Leader. And she was one of the original people that went to New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, St. Paul, that rode the Great Northern, who bring tourists to Glacier Park. So it's kind of in my lineage that we became part hosts, as well as, I guess, guest experience people. This is my grandmother, the old lady in the middle. She's in this photo, she's still working on her wood stove, which she did every single day up until, well, she passed away at 114 in our calculations. Some people contest that, but in our calculations, but she was a great orator. Her husband that you see here, Grandpa John Eaglecalf Brown, was one of the ones that did ride the Great Northern and went to New York, and also was a participant in putting their lodges up on the McAlpine Hotel. When my grandmother that you just seen a while back was 5 years old, she assumed that she was given the name Good Leader after that trip because she sat up there with them and also gave very good representation of our people to the greater societies at the time. The other picture that you see to the far your left is my grandfather and grandmother when they got married back in the 1880s. The next slide that you see is my husband's family. And before I give this to him, I'm going to express the fact that his mother, the tall, slender lady in the middle, was one of the ones that went to Boeing and in Seattle. She worked for the Boeing company and built ships in the Bremerton shipyards during World War II. So she was one of those Rosie the Riveters from way back. The other is that, I guess we're moving too fast with the slides. His grandfather is John Tatsey, and John Tatsey was known as the modern day Will Rogers. And Smokey can tell you about him and Senator Mansfield.
My grandpa John Tatsey, he was a writer for the local newspaper. And Mike Mansfield, who was the longest running elected senator from Montana, had his work introduced into the congressional record years ago. And he became known as the modern Will Rogers. He was a police officer in the Hart Butte area south of Browning here for many years. And he never ever wore a gun. He always had the respect of his community. My grandma, she was related to Sitting Bull on the Sioux side. She's from the Fort Peck Reservation, eastern Montana. What we do is we incorporate all of these histories. These three individuals, Darnell's dad, my dad, and my great grandpa rides at the door. We tell a warrior element within our presentation of how my great grandpa there in Buckskin, he was on 14 different exploits, came back successfully every time, basically to acquire horses from the other tribes. My dad on the left was in the South Pacific during World War II. Darnell's dad was also in the war. And so we tie in a real good warrior element into the presentation, especially for the male side and female side that we have on all of our presentations. Go ahead.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah.
They were advancing themselves. I apologize. I didn't know about the timer.
Yeah.
The family element is really important because, again, we express the fact of who am I, where did I come from, and where am I going? Well, this is the picture to the far left on top is 5 generations of Piikani women. That's why our daughter, the baby there, myself, my mother, and her mother. And this was taken in the 1970s. And at that time, my mother was very instrumental in doing some of the things that we're talking about, speaking to people, organizing dance troupes to perform at grand openings, at the Seattle Sea Fair, at the parades throughout the nation. And she was a great multitasker. Her mother, the one in the middle with the dark glasses, is the one you saw with in the younger days, a Sakaramo, the good leader that had traveled the Great Northern with her father and many of the other people in that entourage that brought the Great Northern to light, as well as the empire builder Glacier National Park, worked for Louis Hill, and she was one of the first people to register people to vote on our reservation. You got to remember that her mother and herself could not vote until 1924. My grandmother was born in 1900, and then her mother was born in the 1800s and brought across into our area on a travoy. So I got great history there, and that's how we are able to introduce ourselves. I know who I am. I know where I come from. I know my path. The other picture that you see in the oval is also my mother and her sister and two younger brothers when they were growing up. They were born in that cabin that they're standing in front of, delivered by my grandmother. She was, like I said earlier, a midwife. Her father, that's holding my uncle, the young boy that you see there, grew up to be one of the most progressive geniuses in Indian country. He developed the TARO, the Tribal Employment Rights, began the Blackfeet Community College. He was the founder of many different things, including finance and development for many opportunities on the Blackfeet Reservation. Unfortunately, he passed at 43, the same as his dad that's holding him passed at 43. And then my grandmother lived to be the first resident in what we call now the care center at the Blackfeet Reservation. The young lady with the longer looking braids cap there is her and my mother were the last two that were, their portraits were done by Winnold Reese. Right now, Winnold Reese's pictures of art and depiction of the Blackfeet is on display at the Museum of the Plains Indian in Browning. It's called Blackfeet Connections. And they were two young ladies at the time. They were much younger than they are here. They received $6 silver for that. The other photograph that you see is my husband's family, and they are, he can explain them to you.
That's, well, basically that's my family, my dad, mom, older brothers and sisters. There's just two of us left in that particular photo, just me and my younger brother there. The rest have all passed on. But again, Darnell has mentioned the history that comes with the families also is presented in our presentations when we do, especially to the older groups that need that connection. Next slide.
And these people are all fluent speakers of our native languages. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
These photographs, what we try to emphasize is the transfer of the knowledge. We have generations that we need to catch up on. And what we do is we incorporate a lot of our family, younger members on especially the visitors that come in. We encourage them to bring their younger family members so that they not only can participate, but that they can look on. One of the things in the past, that there was times when young people were prohibited from participating in ceremonies because the older people wanted just the older people there. And nowadays, to make sure that we continue that knowledge transfer, we incorporate them. These are our granddaughters that are a little older now. These were when they were a little younger, but you can see that they're fully involved. They're fully participate in all aspects of our culture during the summer, well, actually throughout the year. And this is a good depiction of that. The picture on the left is we're up in Glacier National Park going through the trails. The other slide on the right is the Okon, the highest ceremony that we have in the summer.
And the other thing too that I might mention is that path you're on is really important. And the path is your path in life. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, your path is important. And also telling the importance of place. This particular place is called Pita Mahkan, Running Eagle. We were very instrumental into changing this. You spoke of Deb Holland's weekly accomplishments and getting name changes throughout the United States of America. My mother and I were instrumental in doing this along with James Willard Strout Society and many other people in Montana, our tribe. Changing this back from Trick Falls to Running Eagle Falls, Pita Mahkan was really important. And this is it today. You saw the one that has one spillway. That's in the late summer when the spillways start to dry up. But in this early spring, there's two falls running over there, and that is why we somebody decided to name it Trick Falls. But for us, Pitumakan was our woman warrior. We called her the manly hearted woman. And this is where she did her vision quest and her fasting sites. And many of her accomplishments are documented in our oral traditions. So this is a really powerful part of meaning of place.
One of the things that we really emphasize is the territory. We had a large territory from up in northern Alberta to the Yellowstone River. And place was very important because the mountains was also so sacred, as well as the plains part of it. But part of that creation story that we tell has us tied to the land exactly. We're one of the tribes that had never ever left our territory. So we do have a lot of geographical site of importance, in the traditions and the knowledge and the story that goes along with it are so very important, so people can tie in the physical world with the spiritual as well as the mental and emotional part of that. Next.
The next slide, please. One thing I will mention is right behind Pitumakan there, the mountain begins and you go into what we call not Dogyukasi, which is Two Medicine. And Two Medicine is where we put up two medicine lodges. When you heard Smokey say we weren't able to do our ceremonies and do our way of life as we were given. So we went to the mountain as far as we could and put up two medicine lodges. And that's where Two Medicine gets its name. Very important to note that, and it's very famous. These animals that we talk of, I think that changed on us quickly. These animals that we talk of are very important. We have a picture here of the bald eagle, but for us, the golden eagle is the most prominent. And these animals give us that cycle of life. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, they have a story to tell. And with our people, we relate to the ini, or the buffalo, which ini uwasan means our food, our staff of life. And that animal gave us many, many things, from our homes to our food. And that is very important to relate that to children today. We teach children how to cut dry meat. We bring that into the tourists and even show them what a buffalo horn is all about. We have all pieces of it and parts of this animal. We didn't just go out and kill it. They've been gifted to us for certain aspects. And Smokey can talk about the elk and the Buksakwi. The Buksakwi is the BEAR that you see there. For us Thunder people, we cannot speak that English word.
You know, what Darnell was mentioning, the importance of our environment. All of these animals and birds and even the plants that we have all have songs. And when we do our ceremonies, we are obligated by ritual to sing their songs at the time appropriate during our ceremony. And so each and every one of them at some point in our Genesis had given us those songs because of our spirituality that's involved in all of them with us as humans. And not only these four, but there are a lot of other birds that are part of it. Darnell mentioned the golden eagle. That's what makes our bonnets. I don't know. Yeah, we have one coming up. So those are very important to us. They all have a contribution that they give us, like the buffalo. It gives us that strong mind. The buffalo will never deter from a storm. And the element there is he will go right through it. And so we in the human world, instead of confronting and shying away from a conflict in front of us, we take the example of the buffalo. He goes through the storm. We as people go through the storm. We find the results on the other end. So there's a lot of interpretation of all of these types of things. Next slide.
This is a depiction of one of the things that a program, a project, and also a very important aspect of our storytelling, our hikes, but that we are grandparents to and our advisors, elder advisors in the traditional cultural aspect. Ironshield Creative was developed by this young lady that you see there. Her grandfather and my grandfather, his Indian name was Ironshield. So the Ironshield Creative aspect was born. And it's young, it's just barely 2 years old, but it's the first Native women-owned hiking company, I guess, in our state as well as our tribe. And these people take hikes, take people all over from a small hill to a giant mountain. They have literally climbed Divide Mountain, which is one of our more sacred areas and also a very historical landmark. It's Continental Divide. You all know the Continental Divide, the crown of the continent, the black backbone of the world, the Rocky Mountains. These people hike there and take people up, tell stories, as well as bring in music, Indigenous cultural aspects, and give people a glimpse from that side. The cultural hike agenda is there in front of you. I think Leilani might even be on this webinar today. And the themes are really important. The history of the landscape for the territory, historical accounts of the stories and traditional knowledge are all part of this. And the people, it's a growing business. It's a business that is very integral to knowing who you are, where you come from, and where you're even walking. With the footsteps that you're taking, you're on Indigenous lands, you're on Indigenous landscapes, you're in Indigenous territory. So it's really a powerful program. Okay, next slide. I think you'll see here, this practically tells its own story. You see some of the rangers, the Glacier Park Rangers, are even participating with Ironshield Collective here for this Two Medicine hike. And you heard me mention Two Medicine a moment ago. How it got its name was from the Two Medicine Lodges. So it's really, I guess it's awe-inspiring, as well as a good teaching tool. But also there's so much involved in here besides just the oral histories. There's the plants, there's the animals, the mountains themselves, and how we as Indigenous people were given this land to take care of, and we've done a pretty good job of it. Next slide.
You're also, I just had a quick question. You're also doing some training with the Rangers now?
Yes.
Could you speak to that for a moment before we move on to how else you've parlayed your expertise?
Sure. Probably now in the last 5 years, we became associated with the Glacier Park, the National Conservancy, as well as Glacier National Park itself. And on this side, on the east side, we call it, are several rangers that will conduct tours, but they also take care of the campground and many other things. In times past, they had no knowledge as to who was originally here. So as part of that program, what we have done is we're called in to train the rangers as to pronunciation of our place names, pronunciation of plants, letting them know how we have lived here for centuries and eons of time, and how we are associated with this whole collaborative, with the whole area in which they are working for the summer on a seasonal basis. So we train the employees, the volunteers, the rangers, and they also rely on us to be a contact person for them if they have questions. For instance, we have some really silly questions, but also some deep, really prominent questions. We tell them no question is too big, too small, or too outlandish that we can't answer. If we can't answer it, we go back to our genesis. We go back to our stories of who we are and where we come from, and that'll give us the answer to those questions.
One of the other things we do with the Rangers is we invite them to our ceremonies so that they can sit and they can watch and they can actually observe and be part of our ceremonies, which a few of them have had in the past become very astute in terms of when we talk about ceremonies and the terms and how the importance of those animals, birds and plants in the park relate to the people and that part of it. So they become very much part of what we do.
Yeah, the other thing that's really important is when Creator gave us this land, he told us how to take care of it. And we were given the right to hunt, gather, to be able to harvest things of our own. I don't like calling it harvest. I guess it's being able to gather and then craft these ourselves for our medicines, as well as healing potential. The greatest thing that has happened is 2 years ago, the Park Service, the National Park Service, went ahead and went on record to let us be able to gather in the park again. Whereas before we were sneaking this, and we would go at night or at times when nobody was around to take a certain plant that we needed for our medicines. Now we can do that freely. And last couple years ago, some of the rangers even picked berries with us, which is really integral. It's historic. It also shows that cooperation and that, I guess, that networking with people that you need to network with. Next slide, please.
What we've done also in the past is we've been contacted by various private groups like Trek Travel. They get tourists from all over the nation, the world. They come into Glacier on bikes, and then we meet with them at least once a week, and we go through a quick Blackfeet 101 with them. A lot of the people that we meet with, they are not aware that there's still an Indian population in America. We mentioned that they are on Blackfeet country, and you should see the eyes. They get big, their mouth dropped open, and they're saying, "You mean we're on a reservation?" Well, yeah, you're in Blackfeet country. And so those are the types of things that we really encourage, is to get these individual companies that deal with the tourists and get hooked up with them, so that this word that we're still here, we're still people, there's still things that are happening, not like the movies portray us, but we're still here, and get that word out, and then they can pass it on when they get back to their country or their home or wherever they might be.
We had mentioned earlier the importance of the War Bonnet. One of the unique attributes of our people is this straight up bonnet. And these come from the golden eagle, like we said earlier. But these are two examples of that straight up bonnet. The photo that you saw just earlier was Smokey with the sit back bonnet, which is Sioux style. And that was gifted to our people many years ago through a ceremony from the Sioux people that came to visit us. These two straight up bonnets are representative of the coup stories and the ability of a person to gain that cultural integrity. But I'll let Smokey get into that. But before we do, this particular bonnet from the elder on the side is Bull Plume. His name is Bull Plume. That's one of the things that's on display here at the Museum of the Plains Indian. And there's a great story behind this. When he was in his younger days, when he went out on a battle site, he was wounded in the head with an arrow. And on the other side of that bonnet, you'll see that there's an arrow shaft and an arrow on it. And that's in the Museum of the Plains Indian today. Very important that we have those stories that we were garnered from our ancestors. All our stories are traditional, but they're also oral. And that is one factor that people need to remember, is those were passed down through the ages, through the oral histories. And art does tell a story, but for us, it's more than art. There are different things involved in here.
You know, just a point, going back to that straight up bonnet, that was a bonnet that was given to the Bull Society. And the Bull Society was the elder men of the band. In those days, the average age of a male was 47 years old. So if you got to live to a grand old age, you were very, very important because of the knowledge that you possessed. The bonnet itself consists of a lot of elements that have stories behind them, like I mentioned, songs, and it's very important that young people hear the importance of those bonnets. The other items that you have here, the Blackstone Pipe. In our area, that's the only stone that we could quarry to make our pipes, was the Blackstone Pipe. And we're very unique in terms of being one of the only tribes that have the Blackstone. And this one here is the man's pipe. It has the long stem. The lady's pipe is a lot shorter, and the bowl is a little smaller. And each has a symbol or a ceremony that they go through for that simple. The music, of course, is by the drum and the rattle, depending on the ceremony. And we also demonstrate that if we need to, we bring in singers. If it's a large gathering of people, like at the park, we'll bring in singers and we'll demonstrate the songs, dances, and the ceremonies that go with that gathering. Next slide.
Okay, for this particular picture is a painting depicting 4 sacred drummers. Now there's a difference in the ceremonial drummers, the sacred ceremonies, and the social ceremonies, of course. And most of you that are Native people will know that. For the Thunder people, we have 4 drummers, and this is a depiction of that. Prior to this slide, you saw the drum by itself. We have hand drummers. There's a great big wave in Indian country today where there's hand drum contests. There's also the round drum contest, and there's drum keepers. The importance of the 4 sacred drummers here is they are given the rights or the particular special abilities to sing songs that were passed down since time immemorial for the Thunder ceremony. We do not get into ceremonies of this type in these presentations. We only talk and mention them because those are specifically particular to us in our bands and our groups at home. Have anything to add?
You know, one of the things that we always specify is that in our ceremonies, we can never do it alone. When Creator gave us these ceremonies, it was given to us so that our people would get together as large groups and they would participate and share that knowledge. That's why we have an oral history. We never did have an alphabet. And so that was important for these types of ceremonies to get people together at various times of the year and become socialized. But when we got involved with Distant Thunder, the writer had been looking for his connection to the Blackfeet Nation. And over the years, we got to know him. He incorporated his story into a story on the Blackfeet Reservation, and we became his grandfolks. We adopted him as one of our sons. And throughout his whole production of Distant Thunder, it has elements of both contemporary and traditional elements that we've added, and he's incorporated it and made it one of the first musicals that came out and was premiered at Oklahoma Museum.
The show premiere at the First Americans Museum was a great hit. It was also very emotional for us because it involved actually giving a voice to the people that hasn't been heard before. This is the first ever musical, and it's also been done on Broadway that was done for Native people. Sean Taylor Corbett and his mother, Lynn Corbett, very instrumental in making this whole thing happen. Lynn Corbett is the one that did all the choreography for Footloose, and I'm sure all of you have seen Footloose, all that fancy footwork, the music in there, that's her doing. And Sean is her son, and Sean found out that he has Blackfeet roots. So since he was 15 years old, he's been searching for that and enhancing that, and as a product of his search, his path in life, his travels, his art, his ability to perform, his musical talent is unreal. He's the one that was the voice for, there you see Sean in the back there, next to Smokey and his mother in the front. He's the voice for Frankie Valli and Jersey Boys. And just recently, there's a new cartoon depiction coming out on Netflix. And he is the voice of, oh, heck, I forgot.
Coyote.
Yeah, the coyote. And that is another, has to do with Native people. So we're getting a foot in the door for Native people, Native actors, and it's growing. And we're proud to say that we are one of the advisors to this. And Sean is our adopted son, of course, needless to say. And his Indian name is Far Off Thunder or Distant Thunder.
I think it's really exciting to see how your cultural consultation with the parks and with other sites and has continued to grow, where people are now seeking you out to consult for other art mediums and other forms of expression. And that's really exciting. And I know we're hoping to be able to see this musical around the country, and also looking forward to Spirit Rangers, which is going to be on Netflix in October. And so we'll be able to see, hear some of the voices in a cartoon on everywhere in the country. So that's really exciting. We have a couple of resources to share. For those of you who want to learn more about Glacier National Park and the schedule for Native America Speaks in that park, I have the website there, and also information about Ironshield Creative, which has been a part of, you've been a part of that group as it's started to evolve and create cultural hikes in Montana, which I think is just a wonderful innovation for people who are cultural tourists. And then finally, we have some contact information for everybody here. I'd like to thank everyone here for joining us to today's webinar. The webinar has been recorded and will be emailed to all registrants. I will just real quickly take a look, and in the chat, I did want to make mention that some of the people who have done programs in national parks and elsewhere have mentioned that Yosemite, Great Basin, and Tahoe National Forest, as well as Nevada state parks and U.S. Forest Service Humboldt and Lake Tahoe Basin, and California state parks have all done programs with the Native community. Someone else mentioned that there's programs at the Black Canyon at Gunnison National Park in Colorado. Someone else mentioned that Southern Paiute tribe bands from Utah, Arizona, Nevada have done some tribal youth camps in collaboration with Parashant National Monument, which is really interesting, and also at Zion National Park, and have also done some presentations and workshops at the Grand Canyon on the North Rim. Someone else mentioned that they have worked for Knife River Indian Villages National Historic Site and did a different event with Mandan, Hidatsa, and Ariko tribes. Everybody here is really echoing the importance of education being culturally based and learning more about the ancestral home of the Hidatsa or wherever those tribes have been. Someone here is congratulating you all for being a leader in Indigenous tourism, and to keep it up. We've got some fans also who enjoyed your presentation in Yellowstone last month. Oh. And they've incorporated it into an article. Look for more stories to follow. And that's at atmos.earth, and it's Yellowstone National Park Indigenous History Land Back story. So that's something that we'll have to look for online at atmos.earth, and a story that incorporates some about the work that you were doing. And someone else mentioned that they work with Red Heritage out of Page, Arizona, and they're going to be working with local school districts, sharing cultural dances, Navajo rug and basket weaving workshops, as well as storytelling sessions. And so they're working both as a tourism destination and working with the schools. So that's really exciting to see.
Melanie, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just mention, I see a question on any tour guides do agritourism and foodways tours. On Sunday, we just had a picnic with what we call Fast Blackfeet. Fast Blackfeet is a food program called Uyo. And what they do is they have chosen people in the community to plant gardens, and their gardens are becoming tea gardens as well as vegetable gardens. But then the college also has a greenhouse and a hydroponic house where they're starting to grow our own vegetables and produce our own seed storage and share those seeds. But it's just in its fetal stages. But Fast Blackfeet also does, during the pandemic, made sure that our elders had food, and they delivered door to door for those people that couldn't go out. So yes, there are some things developing as far as agritourism. I do a class and take students out or participants out to identify what we call everybody's medicine, along with other people that are in tune or know a little bit about the plants and the foodstuffs that we have here in our area. And we have a long way to go, but we're also working with what we call the Yellowbird Sanctuary and also the Glacier Park Conservancy for holding on to these areas that will give us these certain plants. So that's on its way, but the foodway tours have just begun here at Blackfeet.
Melanie, the other thing I want to mention is that shortly, Darnell and I will be going to Europe to explain the conversion of some of our Blackfeet stories that were in English printed, and they're going to print them in French. And we've been over there a couple times, so we're going back again in a few weeks, and we'll be part of that literature presentation to where we're explaining to the French population the elements of our Indian stories in America.
So the only other thing I wanted to make mention is that we got a shout out from Poe Cultural Center that has been developing some similar programs and is inspired to be developing some new ones and focusing on agritourism too. And I hope to be talking to you as well in the future. And I just wanted to say, for those of you who are interested about this webinar, it will be archived on our website. If you have friends and colleagues who wish to watch, you will be getting a link when we have all the recordings set up, and you're welcome to share that. Please follow us at ianta.org/webinar for future webinars hosted by IANTA. And if you're not a member of IANTA and would like to be, please contact Gail Chihak, Tribal Relations and Outreach Manager. And you can do so by visiting our website at aianta.org. Memberships start at only $50, and artists and tribal museums attending may want to make their membership current so that they can participate in our Shop Native page, which will be up in time for the holiday season. And we are looking into extending that through the next year. So it's a great way to reach new customers, broaden your audiences, and it's a great place to shop. We very much appreciate having you here today. Have a great day.
Melanie, one more thing before you sign off.
Sure.
I just wanted to express to the people that as tribal representatives in the state of Montana, it's really important that our presentations cover so many different things of who we are and where we come from. But more importantly, it's from our perspective, from the inside looking out, instead of somebody writing about us and then writing a book and saying, this is the way it is. Finally, we can rewrite our own histories and do this in our own way. And that is from the very heart, the core of your being. So thank you all very much. We share smoke signals to satellites just on a humorous basis, from smoke signals to satellites with everybody who's willing to listen. And the bottom line is the respect and the, I guess, the fact that all Native people have a lot in common, very much in common, and that is we are still here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys. It's inspired urge to go visit Montana as soon as I can figure out a way to get there. And I look forward to learning more from you and hearing more about what's going on up there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leave.
That means we will see you again. Leave.
Yeah.